Old World, Florida. Dr. Narco Longo.
Brought to you by the Florida Department of Magic. Welcome to Florida, baby.
Florida is the original Garden of Eden.
Florida has the highest concentration of freshwater springs in the world.
Florida oranges are the golden apples of mythology. A race of giant men once roamed this peninsula. The Smithsonian can suck my balls.
Florida is littered with many ancient megalithic ship anchors, known as Saxor stones.
I'm bringing Saxon back.
Noah's Ark was constructed out of gopher wood. Gopher wood only grows one place in the world, Florida.
up, everybody? Happy day. Got a unusually timed show today because we have a international guest. So we're trying to accommodate, time zones and such. But thanks for tuning. We have a very special guest today. I almost said tonight. He is speaking to us from Denmark, I believe, and he's the author of the book on screen here, entitled "Lost 10 Tribes of Israel in Europe," subtitle, "And Their Future Reunification with the House of Judah." And here at the Dancing Elephant, actually carry this book now. Eye out for it, and there's gonna be link description where you can get it. Someone said my audio up. All right, hang on. Is that better? Sorry. Is that better? That's better? Okay. Sorry. How much did you hear? How much did you hear? All right. Well, we're speaking to Mikkel, who is the author of the Lost 10 Tribes of Israel in Europe. And this is his book on screen here. So, you didn't hear anything. Okay. So, welcome everyone. It's an unusually timed show today because we're speaking to an international guest today. Okay. So our guest is speaking to us from Denmark, I believe. He's the author of The Lost 10 Tribes of Israel in Europe, which is now available at the Dancing Elephant bookstore. And we have a very interesting show planned for you, more of an interview. But without further ado, I'll bring on our guest and we can get started. Mikkel, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fine, thank you. And thank you very much for the invitation. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, we're honored to have you. My adventuring into the Lost Tribes theories a little bit amateurish, and you have a lot more expertise in this topic. So we're very glad to have you on, and for you to talk about your book and also hopefully clear up some misconceptions, that many people in the world today are suffering from. Many Christians today are under kind of a hypnosis, you could say. And well, before we get too deep into the content of your book, how many interviews have you done out on the internet?
Well, actually, this is the very first one. I have participated in some Zoom calls, but I was just a participant in that. I was not. It was not me who was getting interviewed. So this is the very first one.
Okay. Well, awesome. Well, then that's even more of an honor to have you as your first interview. But this is something that I've been covering on and off a little bit. But I was hoping to see if you'd given any interviews, and I've been a silent follower of your work for about 6 months now. Is the audio working? Yeah. Okay, I think we're good. But when I saw you make a video about the King James Bible, I said we have to have him on because that's another one of my passions and deep interests is the King James Version, how sacred the English language is, how all of this was divinely ordained, the codes, the gematria, the numerology. And so I've seen you talking about the Lost Tribes for a long time. And then when I saw you speaking about the King James Bible, as the true word of God, I thought, wow, we got to have this guy on. So how did you? Well, you've got a little bit of info on the back of your book here. How do we pronounce your last name?
In Danish, it's pronounced Kragh. Kragh, and it's actually well, I'm not sure what the name for it, a sound word, because it means crow, as in the black and gray bird crow.
Okay.
And that's also the way the crows their sound is, just like the English word crow. It also comes from the way that crows sound. So you could call me Mikkel Crow.
Michael Crow. That would be your good your James Bond name. So Mikkel Cow, close enough.
Almost exactly, yes.
Cool. Mikkel S. Kragh is a Danish historian of the lost 10 tribes of Israel. He has been interested in the subject since 1993, and has written about it in Danish and English since 2004. He lives in Denmark with his wife and 2 sons, but also lived in upstate New York. When he is not writing about the lost 10 tribes of Israel, he hikes, travels the world, and studies the Bible. What else would you like to say about yourself? What else should we know about you?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, as you just mentioned from the back cover of my book, when I was a teenager, I lived in upstate New York. I moved there when I was 13. It was my father who got a job as an assistant professor at Cornell University. And then, the family moved along, and I took the entire 7th grade in a regular American middle school.
Oh, wow.
And then also during the summer of 1988, we drove on a road trip all the way down to Florida. So I have seen most of the East Coast of the U.S.
Oh, wow. Well, it's awesome. It's good to know that you've been to my homeland. And on my YouTube channel, we're all about Florida, Florida's history, ancient history, and even a little bit of Israelite history, believe it or not. Maybe we can talk about that towards the end of the show. But maybe just filling in some of the gaps here. How did you first get into Nordic Israelism, British Israelism, Celtic Israelism? How did you first hear about it? How did you get into it? And why did you decide to start writing about it?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a left-wing atheist family.
Okay.
But then when I was 18 years old, I had progressed to becoming, shall we say, an agnostic. I wondered, is there perhaps there may be a God? And then I looked into what people who promoted Odinism, the modern way of trying to resurrect, the old Norse pagan religion. Read what people who believed in Odinism they had to say, and then I also started to read the Bible, even though I didn't believe the Bible was the word of God. I didn't even believe in God, but just to since the Bible is such an important book, because it has had such an influence on world history. It is worth reading, even for someone who does not believe it is the word of God. And then, I said to myself that I might as well, try to pray to God, to see, like to open the door to God, to see if He was there, So I prayed to Him while I was reading the Bible for the first time, if He would reveal Himself to me while I was reading the Bible, and He actually did that, in various ways that I simply couldn't explain, with an atheist worldview. So that was when I came to faith in God, and that the Bible, that was His word, and that the Lord Jesus, He was His Son. And then at the same time, I also heard about some people in America who believed in this that Northern Europeans, they were the descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel, and that idea, it just like immediately appealed to me. I just took an instant liking to it and began to study it more and more. So I became a Christian and a believer in us being the 10 tribes, or actually at the same time. And
Wow.
Since then, I've just read more and more about it, and then also started to write about it myself.
Wow. So that's interesting. That's got to be a unique kind of entry to Christianity. But I remember in one of your British Israelism videos, you mentioned one of the more prominent British Israelites had a similar coming to Christianity, who was, do you remember, do you know who I'm speaking of? Who was?
I think it's Charles Bradlaugh you are thinking of.
Yeah.
He was one of the most famous or infamous atheists,
Right.
in the Victorian era, in the late 1800s, I believe it was, and went out, to promote atheism and criticize the Bible. And one of the things that he would repeat at his lectures was that try to look at the prophecies of the Bible and the prophecies about the 12 tribes of Israel, and see if they are fulfilled in the Jewish people of today, and obviously they are not. So therefore, his conclusion was that therefore the Bible has to be false. But then he heard about the British Israel message, and then since the prophecies about at least the 10 tribes of Israel, they are fulfilled in the peoples of Northern Europe and their descendants across the world, then it made complete sense to him. And then he both came to faith in Christ and in British Israelism at the same time, and became a quite prominent British Israelite.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can probably relate to him pretty well then. A similar introduction. Now, before we use too many terms that people don't understand, because I've talked about it before, but we're definitely going to have people who've never heard of this stuff tuning in. Can you clarify and explain the terms to us? The lost tribes. So maybe talk about what the tribes of Israel are, and then how some became lost, and then how British Israelism, Celtic Israelism, Nordic Israelism, how are those kind of a unique take on that history?
Yes, so when you read the book of Genesis, then of course it begins with, the story of God's people starts with the patriarch Abraham, who gets Isaac, and he in turn gets Jacob, whose name is changed into Israel. And then Jacob Israel, he gets 12 sons, and they became the ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel. and then they went to Egypt and left Egypt in the Exodus, and then settled in the land of Canaan. That became the land of Israel when the Israelites took it over. And then at first they lived in a sort of a loose confederation without any king. But then they wanted to have a king, and then they first got Saul as king, and after that King David, and then King Solomon. And then because Solomon, he worshipped a lot of pagan gods in his old age, then God decided to punish him by letting the United Kingdom of the 12 tribes of Israel be divided. So 10 of the northern Israelite tribes, they would secede from the royal house of David and Solomon, but that only took place after Solomon's death under his son King Rehoboam. And then the 12 tribes of Israel were divided into two kingdoms. A small kingdom in the south, centered around Jerusalem, which was called the Kingdom of Judah, which consisted of the tribe of Judah, which was large, and the smaller tribe of Benjamin. And then the much larger kingdom in the north, called the Kingdom of Israel, which consisted of 10 tribes. Since one of the conditions for Israel to have the land of Israel in their possession, that was that they had to follow the God of Israel. And but the 10 tribes of Israel, they just continue to worship pagan gods and goddesses, and therefore the God of Israel decided that they were no longer worthy to live in the land of Israel, and then he let the Assyrian Empire invade and deport the kingdom of the 10 tribes of Israel, and that took place around 721 BC. And then the Assyrians, they settled the 10 tribes of Israel in northern areas of the Assyrian Empire, in what today is northern Syria and western Iran and southeastern Turkey. And from that point in time, the 10 tribes of Israel were lost to world history. Simply everyone forgot or didn't know what happened to them. And since then, the people in the kingdom of Judah, they always knew that the 10 tribes of Israel, they were long gone and had disappeared.
Mhm.
And also in English Bibles, the first time the Bible starts to use the name Jews about the people in the kingdom of Judah, that's around the time that the 10 tribes of Israel are deported, because then most of the Israelites in the land of Israel, they were of the tribe of Judah and the house of Judah. And then, as I mentioned, the people in the kingdom of Judah, they were also known as Jews. That's why they're called Jews in the New Testament. And both in ancient Jewish texts, such as the Apocrypha and the Pseudepigrapha, all these books that have a name to them, that says it is written by this and that, but it's probably written by someone much later, and then that much older name is added to it. They all say that the 10 tribes of Israel are long gone and not part of the Jewish people and not part of the kingdom of Judah. And you can also read about it in the Old Testament. It also says there in the book of 2 Kings, in connection with the deportation and exile of the 10 tribes, it says, quote unquote, there was none left but the tribe of Judah only. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. So that makes it very plain, that the 10 tribes, they were long gone. And since then, all major Jewish sources, they have kept on believing that the 10 tribes of Israel, they were long gone and lived somewhere out among the non-Israelite nations of the world under some other name. For example, in the Talmud, which is for those who don't know, that's the religious text that religious Jews, they use to interpret the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible, as they call it. There, every single time the 10 tribes of Israel are mentioned in the Talmud, the rabbis, they say that they are not a part of the Jewish people. And that's very interesting, because the Talmud, it was written down between the 3rd and 6th centuries AD, after the birth of Christ, and it has been basically unchanged since then. So as a historical text, that's really valuable, because we know that it's basically exactly the same text that was finished 1,400 years ago. Obviously, as Christians, we don't believe in it as a religious text, but still, it's also a historical text. And also, since then, major rabbis, they have also believed that the 10 tribes, they were not a part of the Jewish people. And even today, a whole lot of well-known Jews, they also take it for granted that the 10 tribes of Israel are not a part of the Jewish people. Just one example, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel. I read his autobiography a while ago, and in it he says that the 10 tribes, they vanished and were lost to world history. And also
that's a good book for the toilet, right?
Yeah, you could look upon it that way, but I did find that quote. So for all those Christians that believe erroneously that the Jewish people today and the Jewish state of Israel, that's like a direct continuation of the 12 tribes of Israel, which it is not. You just tell them that not even Benjamin Netanyahu believes that. And also Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, I'm sure you know him. He's a famous rabbi from New Jersey, I believe. Or he also wrote in one of his books that the Jews of today, they descend from the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, and that the 10 tribes of Israel, they vanished a long time ago. So he's another one of them that does not believe that the Jews of today are all 12 tribes of Israel, and therefore the state of Israel in the Middle East, it's not a direct continuation of the ancient Israel. Yes, so that was the how Jews have viewed and do view the 12 tribes of Israel and themselves. So then there's been various people since the 11th century that have believed in various shapes or forms that the peoples of northwestern Europe, that they are the 10 tribes of Israel. The first one that I know of, where he positively identifies at least some of the peoples of Northwestern Europe as part of the 10 tribes. That's a Jewish rabbi, Rashi, from the 11th or 12th century in France. And since then, other both Jewish and then more and more Christian authors and Bible students, they have also written about this. But then they didn't really start any mass movements of the people who believed in this until the 1830s, when there was a Scottish clergyman, John Wilson, from the Church of Scotland, who started a series of lectures around the British Isles, and also wrote the book Our Israelitish Origin in 1840, where he gave the whole story. And that started a mass movement, first in the British Isles, of the people who believed in this truth. And then it quickly spread also to other parts of the British Empire and America and elsewhere. And that was the origin of the British Israel movement. It was started by John Wilson, and then it is believed that at some time around maybe World War I or between World War I and World War II, approximately 2 million people believed in the British Israel theory.
Yeah.
And it was very well known, in the mainstream in Britain, mainstream newspapers would write about it, as if it was something that everyone knew about. And then it also other people also picked up this idea, and one of them was Herbert W. Armstrong in America. He started in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and then made a church of his own in the 1930s. I believe it was called Radio Church of God, because at that time the radio, that was like the newest sophisticated way of spreading a message. That was like the internet or YouTube is today. And his church, which he then rebranded as the Worldwide Church of God. Oh yes, that's him. It also got really popular. And then also other people, they have also picked up this idea that the peoples of Northwestern Europe are the lost tribes of Israel, both Christians and also during the last couple of decades, some Orthodox Jews. I remember that in one of your videos you mentioned that you knew of Yair Davidli.
Yair Davidli, the Scottish guy.
Well, he's actually from Australia.
Okay.
Yeah. But he's an Orthodox Jew, originally from Australia, who now lives in Israel, and ultra Orthodox. And he's also writing about this, but from an Orthodox Jewish point of view. So that's well fascinating, because people who come from completely different backgrounds, they come to more or less the same conclusion about where the 10 tribes of Israel are.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, that you did a great job of laying it out for us. And let's clarify, we're going to talk about British Israelism, Celtic Israelism, Anglo-Israelism, Nordic Israelism. So Nordic Israelism is really focusing on Scandinavians, Danish, right? And then Celtic Anglo-Israelism is more focused on the England element, and sometimes they're a little bit hostile to like the Germanic and Celtic Israelism, right? So they are sometimes synonymous, but there are like disagreements between these groups too, right? Like you've mentioned, a lot of the Anglo-Israelites like to label the Germans as Assyrians or some other villainous group from the Old Testament. But some of the Norse Israel people see the Germans as also sharing in the Israelite heritage. But so British Israelism's probably Anglo and Celtic Israelism kind of together. Would that be true? Like British Israelism's everything in the British Isles?
Well, it depends upon how you define it, because the term British Israel, that's a term that has been used for a very long time, like, I don't know, 150 years or more. And both when it was used back in the 1800s and in the 1900s and even today, those people who refer to themselves as British Israelites, they usually do not go out and start churches of their own. They usually stay in the church, typically, or well, almost always Protestant churches, and then have this belief on their own, and meet with other people who believe this, and then those who call themselves Anglo-Israelites, that's typically in America and elsewhere. Well, obviously, because a lot of Americans, they're not too comfortable about referring to themselves as something British, because, well, America was founded by breaking away from Britain. Yeah. And then, those that refer to themselves as Anglo-Israelites, they typically start churches of their own. And then, Nordic Israelism. Well, I know that people have talked about it, and the name of my website, that's nordiscisrael.dk, which means Nordic Israel. But I don't really see it as like a separate theology or system of thought or something like that. I just see it as a way of talking about and writing about the 10 tribes of Israel, but from a point of view from the Nordic nations, and of course, especially from Denmark, because I'm Danish.
Yeah.
So so it's basically from our national point of view. So and you could also call those who are very interested in the Celtic Israelite connection for Celtic Israelism, but.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. It's important just to clarify some of the terms, because I know people are going to be unfamiliar with some of them. So British Israelism, Celtic, Anglo, Norse Israelism, what they have in common is theorizing that the lost tribes of Israel made it to Northern Europe, Western Europe, and settled there, mixed in with the local population, or at least in some cases introduced lines of kings. And that's one of the big important pieces of this is the kings. Well, having kind of been like a beginner in this subject, a year or two ago, I see that there's like three main branches, at least in the English speaking, community, where I see the lost tribes theory, lost tribe theories about the Assyrian, captivity and exile, people talking about the Scythians, the Cimmerians, and Israelites making their way back to Europe. But there's two other sides of this, and I don't always hear the proponents of either talking about the other side. So there's the lost tribe theory, but there's also some people who believe that the Hebrews themselves may have originated in Northern Europe. Have you ever came across that or thought about, a European origin of the Hebrews to begin with?
I have come across that theory, but I've not studied it really, so I can't say much about it, no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and then, so that would be like the second kind of, I don't know, ecosystem of British Israelism that I've seen is people saying that the Hebrews themselves may have originated in Northern Europe. And then the third side of this kind of community that I've seen is like Celtic Christianity, where people theorizing about Jesus himself maybe even going to Northern Europe, Joseph of Arimathea, Glastonbury, there being an early Christian church in the British Isles or Northern Europe. Have you ever gotten into those theories at all?
I have read about the tradition that during the so-called lost year of Jesus, that he went to the British Isles, and this tradition, which is a really old tradition, and which is not it does not originate from British Israelites. It is much older than them. But this belief says that during those so-called lost year of Jesus, from between when he's mentioned as 12 years old, when he is talking with learned scholars in Jerusalem, and then until he starts his ministry in Nazareth and Capernaum just before he turns 30. So that's what is meant by the lost years of Jesus. But this tradition says that Joseph of Arimathea, he was a relative of Jesus, and participated in the tin trade. And of course, tin. There were big tin mines in the British Isles, and the Phoenicians they even traveled all the way to the British Isles and mined tin there much earlier, many hundreds of years before Christ. And then this tradition says that Joseph of Arimathea, he brought Jesus to Glastonbury, where he perhaps talked with the Druids, and so that would mean that if this theory is correct, that Jesus knew where the lost tribes of Israel were when he was during his ministry, and it is mentioned in the Gospels, in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 15, that Jesus says that I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
To the Canaanite woman?
To the Canaanite woman, yes. And he also says when he sends out I believe, is it the 12 disciples or the 70 in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 10, that they should go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Mhm.
And this term, the house of Israel, that's a very specific term. The house of Israel, it means exactly what it says, the house of Israel. It does not mean the people of Israel or the Israelites in general. Because when the 12 tribes of Israel were divided after King Solomon's death, then the two tribes of Judah and Benjamin that remained in the kingdom of Judah, they were also, they are referred to in the Old Testament as the house of Judah, the house of Judah. And then the 10 tribes of Israel that started the kingdom of Israel in the north, they are referred to time and time again in the Old Testament as the house of Israel, the house of Israel. And then, so when Jesus says the house of Israel, he is referring to the 10 tribes of Israel and not to the 12 tribes of Israel today. And there's even some, really lousy Bible translations that translate when Jesus is saying, I'm not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. They translated, I'm only sent to the Jews. And that's a complete nonsense, that's one of the reasons why, I also like the King James version. Well, even though it's not even my mother tongue, I've always liked it. It's just felt attracted to it, and it also has such a nice poetry. It's like reading Shakespeare. When I published, or made that video about the King James version, a Swedish friend of mine who also believes in the lost tribes, he said exactly the same thing, that he has also, just felt a natural attraction to the King James version all his life, even though his mother tongue, that's Swedish and not English.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I love the King James version. I adore it, and it does read like Shakespeare. And there's some theories on Shakespeare's involvement with the King James version and the identity of Shakespeare. I don't know if you've ever gone down those rabbit holes, but many people think Shakespeare was a assembly of people, a committee, like a think tank, and that Queen Elizabeth, this is another one of my favorite theories. Queen Elizabeth had seen how the French had used their language. They standardized French and made it more poetically capable. And as a result, their military might increased because of their reformed language. And Queen Elizabeth put in motion what would become the King James Bible. And she hired the greatest geniuses, the greatest bards, poets, Kabbalists, gematrists, to Francis Bacon, John Dee, perhaps, right? People like that, where this committee got together to officially work on drafting what would become the King James Bible. But people think that many of those men were friends, and in their free time for fun, they would kind of make Shakespeare stories. And this group, this club, one of their nicknames was the Knights of the Palace Athena. The Knights of Athena. And Athena had a spear, and she would shake it. She would shake her spear, and almost like wagging your finger at someone, she'd shake her spear. And people think that this group is also not only responsible for drafting the King James Bible, but also putting together Shakespeare. The Bible was like what they're getting paid to do, and then Shakespeare was kind of like them having fun on the side. Dirty jokes, crude humor, right? Stuff that could have never gone in the Bible. But I'm with you, and those are my theories. I'm not speaking for Mikkel on that. I don't know what he thinks about how the King James Bible got put together, but that's some of the stuff I've heard. Is you always hear people saying things like the King James Bible reads like Shakespeare. Well, maybe Shakespeare and the King James Bible were both British intelligence operations, and they're the type of intelligence operations I'm a fan of. Those two undertakings launched not only the English language but the English people into a very dominant position over the world. So I'm fascinated by that stuff. Have you ever heard about that, Shakespeare and the Bible?
Not that connection that you mentioned. I have heard about this theory that the works of Shakespeare are written by other people and several other people, but not that particular one. No.
Francis Bacon is the most popular candidate. Edward de Vere, a couple other people. John Dee may have even had some influence there. But John, since we're talking about the English, let's just talk about the English language for a sec. John Dee was Queen Elizabeth's court astrologer, a Kabbalist astrologer. He would do her numerology, her birth chart, selected the date for her coronation. And we know that he spent a large part of his life unearthing, receiving this language called Enochian. An Enochian language is angelic language. And it's believed by some people that John Dee was taking angelic information and writing it, encoding it into the English language, the modern English language, via the King James Bible and the works of William Shakespeare. So that's a theory, that there's angelic influence on the English language because of Enochian. John Dee, they used to use scrying mirrors, black crystals, kind of like that. John Dee would stare into this black mirror and believe he was speaking to angels or demons, and a lot of that was sanctioned and funded by Queen Elizabeth. So whatever, all these cool theories, but what do you have to say about the English language? Is the English language sacred? Is it special? Did it come from God? Is the English language a product of the King James Bible, modern English?
Well, obviously, as you say, the King James Bible has had, a huge influence on the English language of today. But since we are speaking about the Israelite connections, there's also plenty of scholars who have written about the Hebrew roots of many words in English, and especially Welsh and other Northern European languages, the Germanic languages also, and there was this Jewish American Isaac Moseson, who wrote a thick book called The Word, where he
just now
wrote. Where he wrote that I can't remember the number, but it was something like 20,000 English words that had a Hebrew origin, and especially in Welsh, there's also many scholars who say that Welsh, that's really close to Hebrew, and that if they know Welsh, it's much easier to understand Hebrew.
Yeah, Welsh. With Welsh, I've heard specifically it's very connected to Egyptian and an earlier form of Egyptian. And there's even some researchers. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ross Broadstock, Alan Wilson. They're big on like Jesus going to Britain and a lot of historical events actually happening in Britain. They talk about some of the similar things you're describing. But he has a book. Let's pull that up. Cumroglyphics is a book by Ross Broadstock. He was Welsh, I believe, Ross Broadstock, and he wrote this book about Egyptian hieroglyphs being worked into the Welsh language. So Coptic, Egyptian. Have you ever heard of these theories? Ever heard of that stuff?
I have heard about this Broadstock, but I mean, the two things about a Hebrew influence on the Celtic languages of the British Isles, and also an Egyptian influence, they don't have to be in conflict, because there's a lot of evidence that prior to the exodus of the 12 tribes of Israel out of Egypt, then a large group of Danites from the tribe of Dan, they left Egypt and sailed to Greece under a prominent Danite called Danaos, where they became a tribe in Greece, also referred to as the Danai. And then later they migrated via the Iberian Peninsula all the way to Ireland, where they became known as first the Tuatha de Danann, which was a people from the sea that conquered Ireland around 1200 BC, and then approximately 200 years later, another people also came to Ireland, also from the sea, called the Milesians. And these Milesians and the Tuatha de Danann, they were able to communicate with each other in their own languages. So that must mean that they must have had a common origin. And then, as I just mentioned before, the Phoenicians, they also sailed to the British Isles to mine tin, and no doubt a lot of Danites that lived in Dan's northern territory, in the land of Israel, that was just next to the Phoenicians, who lived in what today is Lebanon. So when the Assyrians, they started to put pressure on the kingdom of Israel, then the tribe of Dan in the north of Israel, they will be the very first to have felt that pressure from the Assyrians. And if they wanted to escape, I mean, then just traveling a very short distance to Tyre and Sidon and the other Phoenician cities, where there were excellent opportunities to leave the Levant via the sea. That must have been an easy option, to escape the Assyrians. That must have been like, airport today, an easy way to get out of trouble. These Danites and Phoenicians, they also came to the British Isles. So there can easily be several different influences on the languages of the British Isles, the Celtic languages of the British Isles, both Hebrew and Phoenician and Egyptian. I mean, it's not necessary that it's only one of them.
Right. Yeah, totally. Agreed. Now, since we're, again, covering a lot of terms here, let's hone in on some of the explicit evidence. So we've mentioned the word British. We've mentioned the Welsh a little bit. The Welsh are also known as the Cymry. What can we say about the words British, Cymry? The Irish used to be known as the Hiberni or Hibernians, right? Can we find, is there evidence within those names? Do those names reveal a link to the old Israelites?
Yeah, well, they certainly could. I mean, in Hebrew, British, that means covenant man, because Brit, it means covenant, and ish, it means man. So British would mean covenant man or man of the covenant. I mean, and that was exactly what the Israelites were. And even the name Britain, if you just change it a little, then in Hebrew, Brit Am, that would mean people of the covenant, close to Britain. So that could very well be Hebrew words that were carried into the English language. And then regarding the Welsh, that refer to themselves as Cymry. After the 10 tribes of Israel were exiled by the Assyrian Empire and settled in northern areas of the Assyrian Empire, then the Assyrians and other people, later the Persians and the Medes, they referred to them with a variety of other names. And one of the names they used for these Israelites that had been settled there in northern Assyria, that was the house of Omri, because Omri, he was one of the major kings of the 10 tribes of Israel. And in Hebrew, the house of Omri, that would be Bet Omri. And then in these ancient documents, they are referred to as Bit Cymri. And that's almost the same as what the Welsh call themselves.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the Irish and the name Hibernia, and that could very well be derived from Heber or Hebrew, because the Israelites were also referred to or known as Hebrews. And they got their name from the patriarch Eber. So Eber and Hibernia, and also the Iberian Peninsula, where we know that the tribe of Dan, they lived for some time. Those names could also come from the word Hebrew or Hebrews or Eber.
Yes. Yeah, people, who saw my show a couple weeks ago about the British Israelite theory, we talked about Iberia is named for the Ebro River, Ebro. But the Greeks used to call that river Iber. Iber. So Ebro, Iber, and Iberia comes from that old Greek name, Iberia. And also, I like to point out, the Phoenicians, we call Galilee or Galilee. That area at one point was Phoenician territory. When we go over to Portugal, the Portugal, and then we see Gaul, or homeland of the Gaelic people, up there in the north. So the words on my YouTube channel, we're very into words. I obsess over words. I like to play with words, and they always reveal more truth than people think, right? And Iber, Hibernian. So I've been talking about that for a long time. But since the Israelites are kind of starting out in this story in the Holy Land, or Canaan, Palestine, and then they're getting moved to the east and to the northeast a little bit. How do they make it over into Western Europe? The Scythians play a large role in this. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So one of the pieces of evidence that we have, that is from a huge rock inscription in what today is Iran, called the Behistun stone, which is like a giant rock inscription, and with a lot of carved images of people, and the text is written in three different languages. I believe it's Persian and Babylonian and Elamite, and these people that we just referred to earlier, called Bit Cumri, or the house of Omri, from the Hebrew Bet Omri, are called Bit Cumri. They are in the other languages called Gemira, and that's almost identical to the people called the Cimmerians. We just start with the Cimmerians before we go to the Scythians. And these Cimmerians, they did live in that exact same area that the 10 tribes of Israel had been exiled to. And from secular history, we know that the Cimmerians, they then moved from what today is Western Iran into what today is Turkey, and then later on across the Bosporus Strait into the Balkan Peninsula. And what happened to them there, and there's even a Danish historian, or is she a linguist, Anne Christensen, who wrote a book in 1988, I believe, where she identified the Cimmerians as exiled Israelites. And by the way, this Anne Christensen, she's a very well respected scholar, because she's a member of the Royal Academy of Sciences and Letters here in Denmark, or at least she was at that time, which is the most prestigious scholarly society that even the the king attended every now and then. And other historians, both ancient historians, ancient Greek historians, and Roman historians, but also much later Danish historians, they write that these Cimmerians that ended up in southern Europe, in the Balkan Peninsula, and in the area north of the Black Sea, in what today is Ukraine and southern Russia, that they are actually the same as the Cimbrians that were a tribe that lived in northern Jutland here in Denmark. So there's actually a direct connection between the exiled 10 tribes and then the Cimmerians and the Cimbri.
Yeah.
So and then also on this Behistun stone, which is carved around 515 BC by the Persian king. Also, there's a people called Saka, which sounds very similar to Isaac, the father of Jacob. So it could very well be that these Saka were also exiled Israelites. And again, this name Saka, it is also rendered other places as Sake, and then Scythians, this SK sound. And then the Scythians, they were probably not like one homogeneous people. They were probably several different people that lived in the same area, but among them must have been, a large part of the exiled Israelites. So these Scythians, they lived and migrated both in Central Asia and also on the steppes of southern Russia and Ukraine, which is where a lot of tribes, they then moved into Western Europe. And the very name Scythian is also similar to Saxons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even the Scots, they have this ancient tradition that their ancestors, they lived in Scythia at some point in time. Even in the Scottish Declaration of Independence from 1320, they write, explicitly that their forefathers, the Scots, they lived in Scythia at one time before they came to Scotland. Well, also the name, the names Scots and Scythia, and they also have this SK sound.
Yeah.
And of course, in Hebrew, they use the consonants and not the vocals. So, the vocals are not so sure they can be changed, but the consonants, they are more likely to remain.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've got some historical traditions that point to this. We have a lot of etymology or kind of phonetics, philology a little bit that points to this as well, as we've just discussed. Hebrew may have become Hibernian. Cimmerian may have become Cymry, Welsh. The Saka may have become the Saxons or the sons of Isaac, right? Isaac's sons. There's also another one we haven't mentioned yet. What about the Chaldeans? Do you see a link between Keltoi, and Chaldee? Does that come up in your research as well?
No, I think that's just a coincidence
Okay.
that they sound alike, because in the Old Testament it's quite obvious that the Chaldeans are a people, Babylonian people, and referred to as a non-Israelite people. So I think that one is just a coincidence that the names sound alike.
Okay.
But then since I'm from Denmark, one of the most obvious connections that's between the tribe of Dan and Denmark, because of course the tribe of Dan, that was one of the 12 tribes of Israel, and the Danish name for Denmark, Denmark, that's the English name, but in Danish is called Danmark, D-A-N, and the Hebrew tribe is also called D-A-N.
Okay. Well, here, go ahead.
And also in the book of Judges, it says that the Danites, they like to name cities after their forefather Dan. And also in one of the prophecies about the tribe of Dan, it says that Dan is going to be a serpent, as a serpent, by the way, an adder in the path, which could mean, that they would travel along a lot of rivers, and it is worth to yes.
One sec. Do you want to keep speaking while I run to the bathroom real quick?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just
just go on. Just ramble.
Continue about the tribe of Dan. Yes,
I'll be right back.
So in the rivers of the southern Russia and Ukraine and southern Europe, there's a lot of river names that have this name Dan, or at least the letters DN in them. The Danube, or the Donau, as it's called in German and Danish, and the Don, and the Dniester, and the Dnieper. So this it could have been the tribe of Dan that gave their name also to all these rivers when they migrated across southern Russia and Ukraine along the way to Scandinavia. And one of the most direct connections between the tribe of Dan in Denmark and then the tribe of Dan in the lost Israelite tribe of Dan, that's written by the Icelandic historian Snorri Sturluson, who wrote in the 13th century. He's like the grandfather of all Nordic history, and he wrote that the ancestors of the Nordic peoples, the peoples of Iceland and Norway and Denmark and Sweden, that their ancestors they came from southern Russia, where they were known, or where they used to be known as two historical tribes called Aser and Vaner, or Asir and Vanir. And he goes into a lot of detail about where these Aser and Vanir tribes they lived and where they migrated. It is extremely detailed. and he writes how they lived in a city called Asgard on the northern shore of the Black Sea. And then when Pompey the Great, the Roman general, just prior to the wars of Julius Caesar, he was waging war in that area. And then Snorre Sturluson from the 1200s in Iceland, he writes that the Aser and Vaner tribe, because of all that war that the Romans made, then their king or chief or chieftain king, who was called Odin. So according to Snorre Sturluson, this Odin, he was a real person and not, a god. And then Odin, he led the Aser and Vaner tribes across, Ukraine, or what today is Ukraine and Russia, and then they split into two groups, and the one led by Odin went over Saxony in Germany and up to the Danish island of Funen, where he founded a city called Odin's Island, which today is Odense, the third largest city in Denmark, which actually does mean Odin's Island, Odins Ø in Danish. And then he continued up to Sweden, and then another group traveled over the Baltic states, Latvia, and then migrated into Sweden. So even Snorre Sturluson, he even writes that prior to when the Aser and Vaner tribes, they lived there in Asgard on the north, just north of the Black Sea. Then this chief of theirs, Odin, he had also great possessions in Turkland, Turkey, and that's just next to where the Old Testament writes that that was where the 10 tribes of Israel, including Dan and Asher, two of the Israelite tribes, they were exiled to. So that's a very direct link. It would certainly be strange if that was not the tribe of Dan and the tribe of Asher, and possibly also other tribes that just changed their names a little bit.
Yeah. One sec. Well, here, real quick. So maybe I can convince you of this a little bit. Again, like I was saying before, there's kind of like three sides to what I call the British Israelism ecosystem. There are the people who mainly focus on where the lost tribes ended up. Then there are people who focus on where the Hebrews originated to begin with. And then there are the people who mainly focus on where the first Christianity kind of started, where the first churches may have been up in Northern Europe, or some of the earliest churches. Now, within those three movements, it sounds like you're a lot more invested in the lost tribe theories. So this is kind of separate from the lost tribe theory. We're not saying that the Chaldees ended up in Ireland, being known as the Celtic, but some people who are like proponents of this theory, they point more to Northern Europe as the homeland of Abraham's father or his ancestors, and they point to Ire as Ur. So Ireland was Ur land. And when we see Abraham, I like to link this to Hinduism too. We can kind of see there's a little bit of like a universality or an international range to Abraham's influence. Abraham and his wife Sarah, or Abram and Sarai. Over in Hinduism, we have Brahma and Saraswati. So Brahma and Saraswati, they are like, his consort, his wife. But it's also said that Abraham and his wife, Sarah, may have been related, or maybe even half siblings, or part of the same group of children in a community. That same relationship is found with Brahma and Saraswati. So it seems there's some close parallels between Abram, Brahma, but what I think this points to is an Indo-European influence. There were influences or voyages, right, that linked Ireland down to India. And so where did Abraham, Eber, his ancestors from Ur, where did they come from to where their culture, their legacy, their destiny was so different from the people around them? And some people think it may be because they originated in Northern Europe, in Ireland. And this book concerns itself with those theories. Have you ever heard of those theories, or do you just not believe in them much?
I've only heard about it, here and there, but yeah. So I must admit, I don't believe that the Hebrews and Abraham originated in Northern Europe. I do believe that that was where they ended up. But now that you mentioned this possible connection between Abraham and Sarah and India, well, then Abraham, he had three wives and 6 sons. So his first son, that was with an Egyptian woman, Hagar, and that was Ishmael, who is traditionally viewed as the forefather of the Arabs. And then his second son, that was his chosen son, through whom God chose to continue his covenant, and that was, of course, Isaac. That was his Abraham's son with Sarah. But then after Sarah died, he then married a woman called Keturah, with whom he had several sons. But then he ended up sending these several sons of Keturah to the east. I mean, it could very well be that the upper castes, the Brahmin, for example, which does sound like Abraham, that the Brahmin of India, they are descended from some of the sons of Keturah. And also, just, if you use your common sense, since it was Abraham through whom God started his people, and the 12 tribes of Israel, they have had such an enormous influence on the world. Both the ones we read about in the Bible, and then also what we're talking about now. The peoples of Northwestern Europe that are the 10 tribes of Israel. I mean, they have completely dominated the world, for the last 500 years, and it's them that have spread the gospel to all of the world. Most of the other nations of the world that are now Christians would not be Christians if the peoples of Northwestern Europe had not become Christians. And even the Jews that do not believe in Christ, I mean, they also have an influence that is, far beyond their numbers. So if you think about, and then so if you take the peoples of Northwestern Europe and the Jews and the Arabs, I mean, they have had an enormous impact on world history and also have it today. So then ask yourself, what about the sons of Keturah? Would it make sense that they just ended up as completely unknown tribes that never made any impact on world history, since the other peoples descended from Abraham, they have had such an enormous impact on the world? It would make much more sense and be much more logical, if the sons of Keturah, they have also had, a large influence on the world, such as, if they became the Brahmin and, the upper castes in India.
And Keturah loosely can also mean incense. It's a similar Hebrew word, incense, perfume. And we do know these places, their mark in the world, especially from the English Empire point of view, is incenses, perfumes, fragrances. Maybe you could include herbs and seasonings and spices in there too. But that's an interesting theory about that very well could be the explanation for Brahma, Saraswati, Abraham, Sarai. Real quick though, Abraham's father was known as Terah. Is that correct? Terah, the father of Abraham?
Yes, I believe it is, yes.
Now, Terah is not only a Buddhist goddess, but also an Irish god. So the chief god of the Irish pantheon, the Celtic pantheon, was Taranis, Taranis, various names, but you'll always see that Terra at the beginning of it. And this is kind of like a thunder god, like a Jupiter, a Zeus. So the Irish had their Terra or Taranis or Taranis. In Buddhism and Hinduism, we see Tara as a goddess. Tara is the goddess. And you also, I think, brought up Buddhism for a sec, but the Buddhists, the Brahmins, another name for the Brahmins is Aryan. The Aryans, the Brahmins. Now, it's my belief that the word Aryan and Abraham are very close. Not necessarily the same, but astrologically speaking, when we look at words like April or Abra, to open the door, to begin, we associate this with April and the beginning of the zodiac, the spring equinox, which is also the ram. So you see Abraham, the ram,
or Aries, as it's called.
Aries. Thank you. That's where I'm leading towards. Aries, Arian, April, Abraham. Arian and Abraham it's a little bit of a stretch, but both of these terms have been associated with the color red. Both of them associated with the ram and the lamb. And who knows? Now, we're kind of focusing on words here, but let's see if we can kind of anchor this to something that people can touch and feel and see for themselves. You've also discussed in your book a little bit physical appearance and the physical description of Israelites. And I think that's something that people can kind of wrap their heads around a little easier. Things you can see, touch, compare. With the word, sometimes it's too theoretical for people. But since we're on the Sarah and Abraham thing, I want to see what you think about this. In one of your videos, you discussed the biological or anatomical evidence of Hebrew ancestry or Israelite ancestry, like, for example, phrenology, the shape of the head. In one of your videos, there's a quote where all of the Protestant races are Teutonic, all of the Teutonic people are, for the most part, Protestant. And, up until 100 years ago, it was popular for people to compare races based off of the skull shape, the head shape. I also hear in your book, or at least in your videos, you talk about long-headed people. So long-headed people. And what I'm getting at here is there a decidedly Israelite skull shape? Is there are there markers? Are there kind of telltale signs of Israelite heritage that go beyond just ancestry or DNA? Maybe the skull, the hair, skin color, things like that. But real quick, before I let you answer that, Sarah and Abram, you tell me if this is ridiculous, okay? This part of the brain is responsible for, logical thinking, right? What do they call this part? This is the cerebrum. The cerebrum. Could there be a link between Sarah, Abram, and the cerebrum? Cerebrum. Bit of a stretch, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know where the word cerebrum comes from. If it's from Latin or well, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I guess what we're doing here is it's like phonetic Kabbalah. We're not necessarily pointing to etymology. We're pointing to harmony. Back in the Garden of Eden, they say there was one language, and whatever Adam and Eve named something, that's what they called it. And originally, meaning and sound were inseparable. They were the same. Meaning and sound were the same. And it's only really after the confusion of the tongues, Tower of Babel, where meaning and sound have very little to do with each other, at least in most people's minds. Well, cerebrum, Sarah, Abram, the reason I bring up that part of the body is within phrenology, one of the big markers that people would look for is the size of the frontal lobe, the cerebrum, as a deciding factor of European, the European race, white race. And you've even kind of toyed with some of these ideas of there being a anatomical component to the Teutonic people, Israelite people. So, you can ignore my cerebrum theory if you want to. No need to comment on that. But I've always found it interesting. We have Sarah, Abram. Phrenology is like a forbidden science today. You're not allowed to talk about phrenology today. So what do you think of when you think of phrenology, skull shapes, and should we be looking there for evidence?
I don't think we should go into that much detail about the physical appearance of the Israelites, but there is a lot of clues in the Bible that says something about the physical appearance of the Israelites, and for one, that is that there were a lot of blonde and fair-haired and fair-skinned and red-haired people among them. There must also have been, plenty of people with black hair and brown hair, but there certainly were more people with blonde hair and red hair and a fair complexion than there were in most of the other peoples of the Middle East, because, for example, Jacob, whose name was turned into Israel, his father-in-law, that was Laban. And Laban, in Hebrew, it means the white one. So ask yourself, I mean, why would someone call their son the white one? It must have been because he was considerably more white than most other people around him. And also, the brother of Jacob, that was Esau, or Esau, and he later got the name or nickname Edom or Edom, which means red, or something that is red. So then there's again a red-haired person in the family. And also King David, he is mentioned as having a
Ruddy complexion.
A ruddy complexion, yes. So he also, had what in Hebrew is called an atmoni, one who is, has red hair or blonde hair, and is, fair and more blonde than most other people. So there are. It does show that the Israelites of the Old Testament, there were a lot of blonde and red-haired and fair people among them. But then, for example, King Solomon in the Song of Songs, he is referred to as having, well, it's probably King Solomon. It's referring to that he has hair black as the raven.
Yeah.
So I believe that there were probably both, fair-haired and red-haired and brown-haired and black people, or people with black hair among the ancient Israelites. And but then again, that's also how it is with people in Northern Europe. And even among Jews, especially among Ashkenazi Jews, there are quite a lot, that have red hair and red beards. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I talk a lot about the red hair and how it links the Jewish people of today. I almost called them Semitic. There's debate as to whether the most Jews today are Semitic or not, but the red hair firmly linking the modern day Jewish people to the modern day Celtic people. The Scottish and the Irish have the most red hair in the world, and the Jewish people of today have some of the most red hair in the world. Another one, a little silly one. You like potato pancakes?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do. Yes.
The Irish and the Jews are both pretty fond of potato pancakes, aren't they? Yeah. Well, there might be something to that. I don't know. Similar appetite, similar.
Yeah.
Also, I like to focus on not just the words, the hair color, the food, cuisine a little bit, but also musical instruments. Before we had the Star of David, which, let me ask you that real quick. Do you think that the hexagram is the Star of David, or do you think it's the Star of Remphan?
Oh, I definitely believe that it is of occult origin. It could very possibly, what is referred to as the Star of Remphan. But it is definitely occult. I don't believe it's the Star of David. No.
Right.
Also, because all of the sixes that is in it, I mean, that's not a godly signature, so to speak. Yeah. Quite the opposite.
Agreed. I agree. Before the Star of David or Star of Remphan, the Israelites were their main emblems were the 7-pointed menorah, the 7-pointed menorah, not the 8 or 9-pointed menorah. That's post-Maccabee, but pre-Maccabees, seven-sided menorah. So since we're getting to kind of the metaphysics or the 6 versus 7, good, bad, if we're going to draw some conclusions like that, the seven-sided menorah, I believe, is holy and sacred. The 8 or 9-sided menorah, not so much. So, but also another emblem of the Israelite people was the harp. Is that true?
Oh yes, because of course King David is mentioned as being an excellent harp player, and then of course the harp is also a national symbol of Ireland.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another connection. Yes.
Totally. My family's half Irish, so my name is really Irish. I'm big into Irish history. What can you tell us about Robert Bruce? Robert the Bruce. He comes up in some of your videos, doesn't he?
Oh yeah. So Robert the Bruce. Well, let me see. I believe it is in a connection with the Scottish Declaration of Independence. Yes.
Yeah. They sent a letter to the Pope, I think, saying we have Israelite ancestry, so you can't tell us what to do. Something like that. But also, oh man, what was I just talking about? I forgot.
Robert the Bruce.
Robert the Bruce. So, just real quick, there's a little bit of my family history here. When Robert the Bruce died, there was a mini crusade, a quest to bring his heart, the heart of Robert the Bruce, to Jerusalem. And my last name is Logan. That's my real name. And it was the earliest members of the Logan family. Two of the Logan, two knights who were known as, Sir Logan. They were the ones who brought Robert Bruce's heart to Jerusalem on horseback. But they didn't make it all the way there. They died in battle in Iberia, fighting the Moors first, or fighting the Muslims. So my family ties in a little bit. And Robert the Bruce, he's the one who signed off on that letter that proclaims the Israelite, ancestry of the Scottish. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I didn't know that. That's not why I got into this, but looking into it, I saw there were two Logans involved with the life of Robert Bruce. Now, since we're getting towards the end here, I wanted to ask you, I think that my favorite thing I ever heard from a video of yours was when you briefly talked about Lawrence of Arabia and General Allenby and the British campaign in the Middle East during World War I. So I'll ask you, what role did British Israelism play in the British campaign in the Middle East, the Sinai campaign, the Palestine campaign during World War I, and how did Lawrence of Arabia tie into that? Because Lawrence of Arabia is one of my big heroes. I love T. Lawrence. So yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So that is correct. That British Israelism did actually play, a considerable part on the British liberation or conquest of Jerusalem and the land of Israel in 1917. and it started in, I believe, in 1886, where there was an Irishman and also a British Israelite called Grattan Guinness. He wrote a book called Light for the Last Days. Light for the Last Days. So that's written all the way back in 1886. Or was it 1885? But at least no, many decades before World War One. And in that, he calculated or prophesied through various ways that the descendants of the Israelites, that the true Israelites, they would liberate the city of Jerusalem in the year 1917. And he explained that what was it called? I believe it's in the Gospel of Luke that Jesus mentions Jerusalem and what he calls the time of the Gentiles. And then Grattan Guinness, his belief was that the time of the Gentiles, when Jerusalem would be trodden down by Gentiles, it would expire in 1917, when the descendants of the Israelites would liberate Jerusalem. Then during World War One, the first Sea Lord, who was the in charge of the British Navy, that was Lord Jackie Fisher, and he was a great believer in British Israel, and wrote about it and spoke about it, and was also quoted several times in the Times of London, about his belief in British Israel.
That's Lord Fisher you're talking about?
Lord Fisher, yes. And then when General Allenby, he was chosen to lead the campaign to take back, or take Jerusalem from the Turks. Then Admiral Fisher, he told Allenby that one of the things that he had to do, that was to make the British Air Force, which back then was called, I think, the Royal Flying Corps. It was before it was turned into Royal Air Force, so that airplanes would take a major role in taking Jerusalem, and he based that on a verse in Isaiah. I believe it's in Isaiah chapter 31, verse 5, where it says something to the effect that as birds flying, God is going to watch over Jerusalem. I can't remember the exact words, but it is as birds flying. And Admiral Fisher, he was convinced that that meant that airplanes had to be used, and that was what Allenby then did when he made airplanes play a larger role in taking Jerusalem from the Turks. And the Air Force there, that was primarily the German Air Force, but they were beaten because Admiral Fisher had told that they should use more airplanes. And then of course Lawrence of Arabia, he supported General Allenby by fighting with the Arabs, even though the British promises to the Arabs, didn't exactly, hold up, since they, kept Palestine and later gave it to the Jews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is it at all? Well, you talk about Allenby being briefed on on the British Israelism, theory prior to the seizure of Jerusalem. Is it at all possible that T.E. Lawrence was aware himself? Because when I think of Lawrence, it's so hard to think that there were other people in that movement, in that campaign, who were aware of British Israelism. But it's hard to think that Lawrence would not have been aware of it, or considering him and Allenby had a pretty consistent communication, and also his glory. T.E. Lawrence, his glorious achievements are on par with many biblical heroes. Warriors from the Bible, leaders who led an uprising. A little bit like Moses, a little bit like some other characters. But is it at all possible that Lawrence knew this?
Well, it would be almost impossible if Lawrence of Arabia had not heard and also heard a lot about British Israel, because as I mentioned before, World War One, that was the time when British Israelism peaked, and it's estimated that there were approximately 2 million people apparently in Britain,
Yeah.
or the British world, that believed in British Israelism, and it was it was spoken about in public and in the big newspapers. So obviously Lawrence of Arabia did know about it, but I've never seen anything that suggests that he believed in it himself. Of course, there must have been a lot who did believe in it, but didn't write anything about it. But I've never seen anything that suggests that Lawrence of Arabia was a British Israelite himself.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this brings us to another kind of important, an important part of this is, how did the Europeans forget about their Israelite ancestry? Did they forget? Were they brainwashed? Was it God's will that they forget? Is that part of the prophecy that they need to forget in order to remember? Is it, because Moses may have not known that he was an Israelite for a time, and that may have served a purpose in his life, right? So kind of using that kind of logic or concept, how and why did Europeans forget about their Israelite heritage? And the second part of that question would be, as you've stated, British Israelism did play a role in World War I and the British seizure, British, colonization, whatever you want to call it, of the Holy Land. That's what it resulted in. Is it possible that British Israelism was, used as bait, or kind of rationed out a little bit to serve the agenda of worldwide Jewry or some greater conspiracy? And then once that goal was achieved, meaning once the Jewish people are then finally deposited into the Holy Land, is it possible that the British Israelite theory was then covered up to kind of just shut the story, put an end on it? Is there a threat to the nation of Israel or the Jewish people if the Europeans are fully aware of this ancestry and history? So I know I hit you with a lot there, but how and why did Europeans forget? And did their forgetting serve some greater agenda or some darker agenda? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so the first part, why the 10 tribes of Israel that became the peoples of Northern Europe and their descendants, why they forgot their Israelite ancestry, I'm convinced that it was God who let them forget it. So if you start with the very reason why God let the 10 tribes of Israel be led into exile, why was that? That was because the 10 tribes of Israel, they wanted to be like all of the Gentile pagan nation. They did not want to be the people of the God of Israel. So they wanted to become like Gentiles and worship pagan gods, like all the Gentiles did. So I believe that what God did, is that he said something to the effect that, all right, I'm going to fulfill their wish. If they want to become like the peoples of the world, they're going to become like the peoples of the world.
Right.
So it was actually God who fulfilled their wish and let them forget it. But then, on the other hand, God had chosen all the 12 tribes of Israel to be his people. And as Jeremiah says in chapter 31, which is also quoted in the book of Hebrews, chapter 8, then after the covenant of Moses, God would make a new covenant with the house of Judah and the house of Israel. And that's obviously the Christian covenant that he is referring to. And then when the gospel came to the descendants of the 10 tribes in northern Europe, then they believed in the gospel, the new covenant that Jeremiah had prophesied about. And then when they had become Christians and still thought and considered themselves to be Gentiles and non-Israelites, then actually both the wish of the 10 tribes of Israel had been fulfilled, that they had become like the Gentiles, Gentile peoples of the world, and also the God of Israel's wish, it had also been fulfilled, because they had then again become God's people, even though they, by becoming Christians, even though they, did not know that they were Israelites. So that's my take on it. And well, I might also add that it's also very clear from the prophecies, especially the prophecy about the two sticks of Judah and Ephraim in Ezekiel chapter 37, that it is at the second coming of Christ that Israel and Judah are going to be reunited, and only then, not before. That's also the subtitle of my book. So if the 10 tribes of Israel, if they found out they were Israelites, en masse, in greater numbers, then it would already be, to some degree, a reunification with the house of Judah. But since it's only going to take place, at the second coming of Christ, or at least close to the second coming of Christ, then God has. I really believe that it's God who intentionally does not want the 10 tribes in great numbers to know about their ancestry. So it is something of an uphill battle that we're doing when we are trying to tell people about it. But anyway, as to the second part of your question, if British Israel and similar ideas, they have been used to or hijacked by Zionism and the Jewish state of Israel. I don't think so, because first of all, when larger number of Jews started to migrate to Palestine in the 1920s and 1930s, then a lot of British Israelites, not all of them, but a lot of them, they were rather, shall we say, skeptic, and some even, did not, like Zionism. So the British Israelites, of the 1920s and 30s and the 1940s, when the State of Israel was founded, they were not particularly supportive of Zionism and the founding of the State of Israel. Well, one of the reasons was that, the Jews, besides, quite obviously being descended from the tribe of Judah, then, it's also clear from secular history that they are also descended from the Edomites, because the people of the Edomites, they were converted to the religion of the Jews and became Jews in the 120s BC. They were converted by force by the king of Judea, John Hyrcanus. So the descendants of the Edomites are still a part of the Jews. So the Jews are of today, they're both descended from Judah, but also from Edom. And that was, one of the reasons why the British Israelites of that time did not support, Zionism. And also some of them, they, shall we say, in my point of view, exaggerated the Edomite, influence on the Jews, and how much the Jews were Edomites. I believe it's only a minority of the Jews of today, but many today, who do believe in the theory about the lost tribes, they believe that the Jewish people are, like 100% Edom, and I believe that's, wrong and an exaggeration.
Yeah.
And so then, when the State of Israel was founded in 1948, I think the best judge of whether British Israel it was used to support Zionism, that's a book about the British Israel movement. What is it called? Israelism in Modern Britain. It was written in 2022 by, I think his name was Aidan Cottrell Boyce, who is an English politician, and he's like a lefty. He has been a candidate for the Green Party. That's a really left-wing party. So he's not at all a supporter of British Israel. But his book, is it's surprisingly unbiased. I'm really fascinated by how correct and unbiased it is. And according to Cottrell Boyce, the reason why the British Israel movement it started to decline, that had everything to do with the general decline in Christianity in Britain. That the people of Britain became less and less Christian, and that was completely the same with the British Israel. And it did not have anything to do with the founding of the State of Israel. But I have also heard that theory from others, but I don't think the evidence supports it. I mean, it is a natural thing to think, but the evidence doesn't seem to support it.
Right. Yeah, those are good points, and you did a great job of kind of pointing that out. I would only clarify though that I don't think British Israelism was used to let's say there is this global let's say there is a international banking elite who they're using Zionism as kind of a mask and a facade for some of their darker intentions. When we talk about General Allenby being at least in part influenced or motivated, or at least armed with British Israelism in preparation for seizing Jerusalem, what I'm kind of asking about is, why don't we hear more of that after the fact? Why wasn't British Israelism used in any other kind of military campaigns, or has it been is British Israelism or similar? Because what I'm seeing is America and England involved in so many wars in the Middle East. It seems like British Israelism only made it to the surface leading up to the seizure of Israel. Now, after Israel has been awarded to the Jewish people by the British Empire, it's not so much that British Israelism played such a large role in achieving that, but I see a stark difference after, where it's almost like British Israelism was discarded or stomped out, or it's never came close to reaching prominence since World War One, or very, very little. So I guess my clarification would be, it seems from my point of view, British Israelism was allowed or permitted to achieve somewhat mainstream attention, but after the creation of the State of Israel and the British seizure of it, so World War I, World War II, after that, if there are people who control the media, if there are people who control what can or can't become popular, it seems to me British Israelism was put on the list of things that are not allowed to be popular, that are not allowed to flourish. That's my opinion. So it seems you point more towards God is kind of keeping this a mystery. He wants it to be a mystery for the European people. But all right, let's talk about something else. We can't go on for too much longer, but in America, here in Florida, we actually have some of our own lost tribe theories. Some of the earliest Europeans to come to Florida were the Huguenots. So the Spanish came to Florida in 1513. The Huguenots, French Huguenots, some Irish, but mostly French, they came to Florida in 1562. Mostly French, some Irish, and they were some of the earliest Protestants, these early French Huguenots. They escaped Europe and made it to America. Why they came to America, I don't know. They were hoping maybe they could settle here, bring their families over, kind of like the Mayflower and Jamestown and stuff like that. But what we know about the Huguenots is that they themselves believed they were descendants of the tribes of Israel. These French Huguenots, I believe specifically, let me double check this. They believe Benjamin and what other tribe? I think they said Gad and Benjamin, I think, and Reuben maybe. But they believed that they were some tribes of Israel. And they went to Florida looking for this new land, almost like a promised land. Decades before that, Christopher Columbus, when he came to America, some of the first things he wrote down was, well, first off, he brought a Hebrew translator with him. He brought a Hebrew interpreter to the Americas. His name was, I think, Luis de Torres or something like that. But he spoke Aramaic, Hebrew, and Aramaic, and Hebrew. He came with Columbus, and Columbus believed he heard Hebrew words among the Native Americans. He believed they were using Hebrew words. They named certain places Hebrew names. So on his first voyage, he brings a Hebrew translator. On his second voyage, he believes he found paradise, the biblical paradise. His third voyage, he believes he found the rivers of Eden. On his fourth voyage, he believed he found the gold mines of Ophir and Tarshish, or where King Solomon got his gold. So, in addition to the lost tribes in Europe, British Israelism, Celtic Israelism, putting those to the side, the other, what I've seen, the largest movement pointing to a lost tribe theory actually points to America. And this begins with Columbus. So if you're familiar with Mormonism, the Mormon church believes they kind of made a whole religion out of that theory. Did Israelites come to America? And if so, what happened? And then they even also talk about maybe Jesus coming to America, things like that. You know, it's a little ridiculous, maybe, but basically, what do you think about lost tribes in America? I know you talk a little bit about, in a more spiritual or like prophetic sense, America being Manasseh or Ephraim, mostly Manasseh.
Manasseh, yeah.
Manasseh. But outside of that, in the less spiritual sense, in the more literal sense, do you think Israelites ever made it to America? Have you ever explored those theories, or do you have any opinions on them?
That theory about the possible connection between the lost tribes and certain Native American tribes, I have explored that to some extent. But by the way, I do believe that white Americans, and the United States in general, is the tribe of Manasseh. Obviously, not every single white American, but that Manasseh is the predominant Israelite tribe of that white Americans are originate from. But when it comes to possible, Israelite connections with the Native Americans or some Native Americans, there are some evidence that Israelites and probably along with Phoenicians did end up in North America, because there has been found, some inscriptions. I think one of them is called Los Lunas. Is it in New Mexico or Arizona, or with a Hebrew writing? And also there was or is this Professor Barry Fell, who has written, I think it's 3 big books. One is called America BC, where he also traces, remnants, from Israelites and Phoenicians to North America. So I do believe that some Israelites and Phoenicians went to North America, and it would also make sense, if some of them, got children with Native American women. I mean, that's what sailors do, and are infamous for. Then when it comes to whether some of the Native American tribes, are Israelite as tribes, and not just have like a drop of the Israelite blood, I do not believe that, and that brings me to what I call the real hard evidence for Northern Europeans being the 10 tribes of Israel, because all of the things that we have spoken about today, the historical records and archaeology and linguistics and physical appearances and such. I mean, it certainly is a lot of evidence that could be construed to conclude that we are the lost 10 tribes of Israel, but it really only is circumstantial evidence, or several pieces of circumstantial evidence. It's not like a smoking gun evidence. So I understand that among your listeners, there's both Christians and non-Christians. So if someone does not believe in the Bible, and that it's the word of God, and hear all these things, and say, and if they say that I think it's just coincidence, and that the 10 tribes did not end up in Northern Europe, then I would totally respect that point of view. Even though I do believe that we are the 10 tribes of Israel, but then there's the other hard proof, that there actually is a smoking gun evidence, and that's the biblical prophecies about what would happen to the Israelites, and they are really so precise and so detailed that they can only be fulfilled in the peoples of Northwestern Europe.
Yeah.
And their descendants, just take one that the Israelites, they would become as numerous as the sand of the sea and as numerous as the stars of heaven. So if you look at the people of the Jews, there's approximately 15 million Jews today. I mean, that's a rather small people. That's certainly not, becoming as numerous as the sand of the sea and as the stars of heaven.
That's as many as the Mormons. There's about as many Mormons as there are Jews. Just about.
Or Dutch. But it is fulfilled, in the peoples of Northwestern Europe, that have multiplied in North America and Australia and elsewhere. And also another one that's about just one of the Israelite tribes, the tribe of Ephraim, whom we believe is Great Britain and the British nations more generally, because it was prophesied by the patriarch Jacob that just one Israelite tribe, the tribe of Ephraim, it would become a multitude of nations, quote unquote, a multitude of nations. That's in Genesis chapter 48, verse 19.
Yeah.
And if you look at the people of the Jews, they are not a multitude of nations. They're just one nation, one people. But there were 12 tribes of Israel, and just one of them would become a multitude of nations. So as the Jewish Encyclopedia or one of its editions says in the article about the lost tribes of Israel, it says that if the 10 tribes have disappeared, then the literal fulfillment of the prophecies would be impossible. But if they have not disappeared, then they must obviously exist under another name. And I can only agree with that.
Yeah. Well, okay. So maybe, next time we have you on, we'll focus on some of the prophecy and, how this is playing out in our lives today. But we'd love to have you back on the show sometime in the future. And before we let you go, is there anything else you're working on? Any books planned or any new videos in the works?
So in 2 weeks, I'm going to England, to London, to speak at a British Israel conference. And by the way, the topic of my talk there, that's going to be Dan and Ephraim, about the tribes of Dan and Ephraim. So I'm sure that you will find that interesting.
Oh yeah. Well,
So I would love to come back on your show and, for example, talk about the prophecies, because also if you apply the prophecies of the Bible correctly, to if you apply the prophecies about the 10 tribes of Israel to the descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel, and the prophecies about Judah to the descendants of Judah, and the prophecies about Edom to the descendants of Edom, then it can tell you quite a lot about the future, not just the past, like World War I that we've talked about, but even what's going to take place, in the probably the coming couple of years. So I would love to get back.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll make that happen soon. Now, if people want to support you, they can go buy your book. Is Amazon the best place for them to buy your book?
Yeah, yes, that would be Amazon, yes.
All right, guys, go get yourself a copy of The Lost 10 Tribes of Israel in Europe and Their Future Reunification with the House of Judah. Go get yourself a copy. It's nice and cheap, good price, very affordable. And also, your website is nordiskisrael.dk.
Yes, yes.
Nordiskisrael.dk. If you guys want to see his website, you can to get the English page, just search it through Google. Oh crap, where's that? There it is. Yeah, you've got some English links on your page for people who speak English. They can still
Oh yeah,
visit it.
most of the articles on my website are in English, and by the way, also the videos that I post on YouTube, I post the text of them on my website afterwards.
Yeah. So here, sorry guys, I'm gonna paste the link for to his book that's on screen. Go get a copy of Mikkel's book. And then also go to his website, Nordisk Israel. I'm going to paste that in the chat right now. This is his website, nordiskisrael.dk. And then his YouTube channel, going to search Mikkel Kragh. And here's his website, or his YouTube channel, sorry. And guys, this is a treasure mine, okay, gold mine of a YouTube channel. I'm pretty sick of stuff on YouTube now. I've been watching YouTube videos for like 12 years at least, like night and day. When I eat, throw on a YouTube video, and one of the few channels that I've been able to just, zone out to, just, stay glued to the screen is Mikkel's right here. Go check out his channel. He's got great videos. And some of your videos are in Danish too, right?
Oh yeah, and I even have 3 in Norwegian.
How many languages do you speak?
Well, I only speak Danish and English, but then Norwegian and Swedish, they are so close to Danish. They are, what do you call it, mutually intelligible, which means
Yeah.
that when I speak with a Norwegian or Swede, we speak in our own languages. We don't need to learn each other's languages. But I also do speak some German. All Danish school kids are required to have German in school, but that's like more basic stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I can't. Yeah.
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Nur ein bisschen.
Yeah, well, I can't speak at all, but all right, Mikkel, we'll have you on again soon. And guys, go support him, his YouTube channel, his book, his website. Let's get him over 1,000 subscribers, guys. Let's see if we can push him over the edge. All right. Everyone go hit that subscribe on Mikkel's YouTube channel. And good luck at that event or conference you said you're going to in 2 weeks. Is that going to be videotaped?
My plan is to videotape it, and then also to make a video about it, with the illustrations afterwards. So I actually plan to do it twice, both live or recording from London, and then a regular video when I get back home.
Yeah. Okay. Now, my brother had a question for you. What does Mikkel think of Tolkien and Lord of the Rings?
I like it a lot, but besides that,
Yeah, not much.
Yeah, no, nothing like that.
Yeah,
connects, with this subject, but I certainly do love, the Lord of the Rings and
yeah.
the Hobbit. So
yeah. I think he asked that a little bit further back in the show. I think we were probably talking about language or the English language or Shakespeare, and with Tolkien was very he studied language, extremely. He was an expert in the English language. He taught English at Oxford, I believe, and he had access to certain histories about the English language. And I think maybe my brother was asking, could Tolkien have maybe picked up on some of these Semitic influences or Middle Eastern influences on English? Because Tolkien believed that mythology was inseparable from language, that language created mythology. Mythology was not generated in the imagination. It was generated in prefixes, suffixes, phonemes, words that sound alike. But so whatever, we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
Yeah. Well, Mikkel, thanks for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Oh yeah. So once again, thank you very much for inviting me. It has been an interesting talk. So I appreciate it. Hope the viewers also have found it interesting.
Oh, they definitely found it interesting. Well, have a good one, Mikkel. We'll see you next time.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And people out there, thanks for tuning in. Like I said, go check out his website, his book, his YouTube channel. Let's see if we can get him over the edge. 1,000 subscribers for Mikkel. Hopefully. I better see this number go up tonight, okay, before I go to sleep. But I'm going to be digging into his book now that I have a copy. And I'm going to continue watching his YouTube channel. And all right, guys. See ya.
Yep. Wild Indian, yeah.
Hey, V.